Hello everyone and welcome to Autocrat. We are back this week after a short break last week. Hope you liked the sneak peek into After Alexander. Go listen to more of that if you want, because it's a really nice show.
Thank you for the plug.
You're welcome. But today we are back with episode 48 of Hercules, part 15, Death of a Demigod. So as you can guess, we are finally going to be dealing with the end of Heracles' story.
Man, it's been a while.
It has been a while, but it's been quite nice, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's been nice looking at each task individually. I don't think I've ever seen that. I might be wrong, but I think we're the first.
But more than that, we are going to be finishing chapter 1 of Autocrat today, because we'll be done with mythology by the end of this episode.
Ooh.
And, well, you can have a guess what we'll be starting next time.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to it by the end of today, but we'll keep you in suspense for now.
Now, this story comes to us courtesy of Ovid, specifically book 9 of his Metamorphoses and from Apollodorus.
Okay.
As we said before, Heracles wanted to get married. Was he not married already?
He was married to Megara, but that sort of ended with him murdering her and her children.
I mean, I wouldn't marry him if I knew that.
No. I don't think there's any Greek princesses that are looking forward to the prospect of Heracles showing up.
He found out that King Heracles of Oceania had said the man who beat him and his 4 sons in an archery contest could marry his daughter Iole. What's with dads just giving away their daughters?
Be completely fair to him. He's not giving away his daughter. He's setting various archery-related criteria.
Fair. Now, what do you think Heracles does?
Well, it's a problem that involves violence in some capacity, so I think he's going to be very good at it.
He is. He just shows up and beats them.
Nice.
Because that's what Heracles does.
Yep.
He beats people up.
He is the great-grandson of Perseus, so he instantly solved the problem.
Guys, if you need a bully beat up, just call Heracles on 111. Heracles will beat you up. Will beat someone up for you. /2.
I like the idea that phone numbers have slashes. Or alternatively, go to his new website, www.nemeanlion.com. I am joking, do not look that up. We do not have a website called that.
No, our one is called autocratpodcastwordpress.com.
Yeah, and is way better.
It is. Go see that one instead.
Anyway, plug over.
Now, the eldest son, called Iphitus, wanted to honor the agreement.
I mean, fair. The archery-related criteria were met. He's powerless to intervene.
However, Eurytus and his other sons refused, worried that if Iole married him and bore him children, he would kill his children again. Fair point.
Yeah, it's not unreasonable. There's precedent. Any dad would be worried by this.
Yeah, because if the version where Megara died by his hand is accurate, then her life might be a bit on the line. Iole's life, that is.
Yeah, I think when the vicar says, "Till death do us part," you're not meant to look over at Heracles and think, "And not by you."
The flames were further fanned when Autolycus stole some of the king's cattle.
Okay.
Now, who is Autolycus?
I didn't look this up in time. I think that he is the son of Hermes and a little bit of a prankster.
Right.
From what I remember from shows such as Myths and Legends. We'll probably get to him at some point.
Well, Eurytus was convinced that it was Heracles who had done the bad deed.
Yeah, okay. Wouldn't help things.
But Iphitus sided with Heracles.
Seems like the nice guy of the story.
They had a bit of bonding time, but for some reason during that bonding time, Heracles was driven mad by something, maybe he had schizophrenia, you don't know, and flung him from the city wall.
Wow.
That seems a bit harsh.
Even the wildest night out drinking does not usually end with people throwing each other from city walls, nor should it. I'm going to say that as a public service announcement now.
To be purified of the crime, he went to Neleus, the leader of the Pelians.
Okay.
Which, I believe we see him again as Norman during the Trojan Wars?
I think from the bit of reading ahead I've done, someone called Neleus shows up. I think he's king of the Pylians. We'll find out.
Now, the problem is, Neleus was friend with Eurytus, and he refused to help Heracles, which means he had to go get the job done elsewhere.
Right.
Well, he became very ill because of the murder, and to try to find out at Delphi how he could get better.
Yeah.
The priestess didn't answer him, so Heracles ransacked the temple and tried to set up his own oracle.
This sounds a bit like medieval monarchs not liking the current pope, so setting up an anti-pope. Was this an anti-priestess? Was there a big schism all across Greece with people siding with different ones? The oracle at Delphi versus the oracle at, I don't know, Heraclea, let's call it that.
Well, the thing is, Apollo took issues with this, so he came and started to fight Heracles.
Yep, okay, that's concerning.
And the only thing that stopped them was Zeus physically chucking a lightning bolt in between his two sons.
I like that. I feel like that could be a good thumbnail image. Just a lightning bolt between Heracles and Apollo would stop it, you two. I will turn this chariot around.
Heracles then received the news from an oracle that he had to work as a slave for 3 years to work off the crime, as well as paying Eurytius in recompense.
We're back with this again. We're back to Heracles being a slave or a servant for various years because of violent crimes he commits while mad.
Hermes, who was apparently involved in this process, sold him off to the daughter of the king of Lydia.
At least it's not Eurystheus' daughter.
During these 3 years, we get more shenanigans, including Heracles finding the body of Icarus washed up on the shore and burying it.
Wow. I don't even know how long that would have been there.
Me neither. Apollodorus places the Argos journey and the Calinodian boar story, both of which involve Atalanta during this period of servitude.
Right.
When it was finally over, Heracles decided to head an expedition to Troy, so he set off with 18 ships.
Okay.
Now you're going to tell us why.
Yep. So, I believe we might have mentioned before that someone called Laomedon of Troy was in trouble with Apollo and Poseidon for not paying them for building up the walls of Pergamon. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Well, he was in trouble. Apollo sent plague and Poseidon unleashed a monster. That is kind of the go-to for Greek mythology. If you want revenge, send a monster. Predictably, an oracle said that Laomedon's daughter Hesione should be exposed to the monster. Because again, that seems to be the standard cure for monsters. During the course of getting Hippolyta's belt, Heracles had offered to deal with the monster in return for the horses that had been left by Zeus in return for abducting Ganymede that one time. Anyway, point is, he'd previously said, hey, I'll come and deal with this for a price. However, when he killed said monster, Laomedon went back on the deal. Heracles had sailed away at the time, shaking his fist and threatening war if he ever came back. Well, it turns out consequences have now finally come for Laomedon.
Ooh.
Troy was put under siege. Hey, that might become a thing. That sounds like something that could become a thing in future.
It could become a thing.
Don't know why I thought of that. Anyway, eventually someone from Heracles' camp called Telamon broke through the walls, with Heracles being the second man over the walls. Predictably, maybe, Heracles became jealous at the idea that somebody else might get the limelight and ran at Telamon with his sword drawn.
Ah, what a jealous boy.
Yep, Telamon appeased his ego by gathering stones really quickly, I imagine, to build an altar to Heracles. You know, because he's the glorious Heracles who was definitely first over the walls, the first man, not me. I think that's how it's meant to be interpreted anyway. Heracles then killed Laomedon and all of his sons.
All of them?
Well, actually, no. There's one left.
Which one?
A little boy called Podarces.
Okay.
Laomedon's daughter Hesione, so the sister of Podarces, was given to Telamon as a bride. Heracles allowed her to take whichever prisoner she wanted back to Greece. Predictably, and also cunningly I will say, she selected her brother Podarces. Heracles countered that Podarces needed to be a slave first and then be bought back by Hesione. I don't know if he just has a grudge at this point, but that's what he
might do.
He might do. She did this, giving the veil that she wore on her head as ransom money. Because of this, Podarces gets a new name, from the verb to buy, being priamai. His new name was Priam. Put a big, big pin in his name. We will be back to him.
Alright.
Now, in other news, the fight against the giants may also have happened on Heracles' way back from Troy. You know, the one where the giants tried to overthrow Zeus.
Yeah.
So that's another example of Greek mythological timelines being all over the shop. Anyway, there's some more shenanigans, but the only noteworthy thing is that Iphicles, his brother, dies in the fighting going on during said shenanigans. We're going to move past that because Heracles then wanted to woo someone called Deianira.
He moves on very fast from people to people.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you got to accept that the archery-related contest did not in fact give you the right to this person's hand. Now, I think we discussed during the last task that, when Heracles descended to the underworld to get Cerberus, he ran into Deianira's brother Meleager, and during the course of their discussions, Meleager suggested Heracles could marry his sister. Well, Deianira was very popular with the men, let's say, as Greek princesses usually appear to be. There were a lot of people clamouring for her hand. Among these was Agesilaus, the personification of the river Calydon. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. When he and Heracles showed up, the other wannabe husbands left, knowing they didn't have a chance.
I feel sorry for the one guy who saved up for a year to buy a flower and is stood in line looking really hopeful, and then a literal god and Heracles show up.
Heracles boasted that if Deianira married him, she would have Zeus for a father-in-law. I mean, he was probably like, hey, I'm the son of Zeus.
Do you know who my dad is?
My father will hear about it if you don't marry me.
He's not Draco Malfoy.
Oh.
That would be a fun crossover, though.
He also boasted about his task.
That seems more relevant than who his dad is.
For his part, Achilles said how shameful it was to reject a god in favor of a mortal man.
I mean, Aphrodite has set the precedent that you don't insult gods.
As he was a river, or well, the personification of one, he would not be a foreigner as a son-in-law, but instead a native son of the region.
Okay, not packing any punches when it comes to Heracles then.
Moreover, he also scathingly said that at least he had never had Hera be mad with him and force tasks on him.
Ooh.
He accused Zeus of not really being Heracles' father, pointedly calling Heracles the son of Alcmene.
Ow.
Either that or Alcmene was an adulterer.
Oh.
Heracles basically had to choose if he was a demigod son of an adulterer or else just a man.
I can imagine Agesilaus jabbing him repeatedly in the chest as he says this,
like,
thinking
who are you?
Thinking he has the moral high ground.
Now, Heracles lost it at this point and charged, which Achilles interestingly says is not the behavior of a hero as he did not show restraint.
Oh.
It says that, yes, Achilles might be better with words, but his fist would win over that of the river.
That is very on brand for Heracles' trash talk.
Achilles drew back at first, but then launched into the fray. During the first crab, the sheer weight of the river prevented Heracles from gaining an outright victory.
I mean, it is a river.
In the second bound, Heracles tried to force off the onrushing Achilles, only succeeding on the fourth attempt.
Wow.
He then body slammed on top of Achilles, apparently seeming to have the mass of a mountain. After a lot of training, Achilles forced him off, but Heracles pressed his advantage while Achilles was exhausted and forced him down by the neck, winning the bout.
Wow.
Achilles now tried shape-shifting into a snake to win. However, Heracles apparently laughed at this and said that he had been killing snakes since a baby, and that he might be a big snake but was only the one, so a hollow shadow of the Hydra.
I mean, that is fantastic trash talk.
And yes, I was doing all that thing on my co-host next to me while I was talking about it.
Yeah, you can imagine me shape-shifting into a snake if you'd like, listeners.
He's a cute snake.
Thank you. That means a lot.
He's called Heracles of Tyrians at this point by Ovid, so at least we know exactly which city he was born in.
Yeah, that's fun.
Heracles strangled Achilles, forcing him to shapeshift into a bull, for some reason.
Okay.
Heracles put him in a chokehold, managing to bodily tear one of the horns off. This horn became the horn of plenty in due course thanks to the purifying work of the Naiads.
Okay, that's fun.
So basically, Heracles won and married Deianira.
I mean, that's impressive given that he's fighting a river. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I go to fist fight the River Thames, it doesn't usually lead to any outright victories on my part.
In time, another suitor for her hand showed up just as the newlyweds were coming back to where he lived.
Okay.
They came across the Evenus River, which was swollen and difficult to get across.
Yeah.
Deianira was worried about making the crossing. Just then, who would show up but a centaur by the name of Nisus? Nisus offered to take her across, which Heracles agreed to. Heracles jumped in after throwing his weapon across, but when he reached the other bank, Deianira wasn't there.
Ooh.
He heard her shout in fear and came to the realization that Nisus was trying to get away with her.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he went to the Zeus school of wooing women. Just abduct them.
He called after him and drew his bow. A Hydra poison-loaded arrow flew through the air and shot clean through Nisus' chest. Yes, I'm still pretending I'm throwing an arrow through my co-host's chest. It's
Yeah.
funny. Nisus was now dying. However, he wanted to get back at Heracles even from beyond the grave. He soaked his shirt in the poisoned blood that was now gushing from his wound.
Okay.
Apparently centaurs wear shirts. Who knew?
Yeah.
He then offered it to Deianira, saying that it was actually something which would help engender love in those who wore it. You would think that she had seen all of this and would be able to put two and two together, but apparently not. We're now going to fast forward quite a bit, and you're going to take us through the fast forwarding.
Yep. During this time, Heracles fathers a child called Tlepolemus by Astyoche, daughter of the king of Ephyra, and I only bring this up because, as far as I know, we will be seeing him again in future. Heracles was famous and was carrying out conquests. During this time, he took his revenge against Eurytus by taking his city and killing his sons. Seems kind of harsh given that one of them was on his side the whole time, but
yeah.
Oh well. During this expedition, he captured Iole and took her back with him.
Rude.
Rumours reached Deianira that her husband was falling in love with Iole. I mean, I don't know how else you're meant to interpret your husband taking another woman from another city like that. Well, at least within the troubled context of Greek mythological times. At first, she wept and thought about whether she should leave outright, but then she remembered the shirt. So she sent it to Heracles, planning to bolster his love for her when he put it on. And he did put it on. Just as Heracles was offering sacrifices to his father at Cenaeum, the poison began warming up due to the sacrificial fire and melted through his arms and legs.
Ouch.
Heracles bore it for as long as he could, but soon let out a scream you could hear all through the region. He realised what the problem was and tried to pull the shirt off, but only succeeded in pulling his skin and sometimes his muscles off, revealing bare bone.
Ouch!
Now, his blood was bubbling like boiling water due to the poison at this point, so you can tell things aren't looking good.
That sounds like an actual poison I know of.
I have no idea, it might be inspired by something.
It is.
Agonised, he cried aloud, asking Hera if this was his reward for all his hard work while Eurystheus was sitting high and dry. He made his way through the region, sometimes unleashing his fury on mountains, sometimes trying to shred the shirt. He found the messenger who'd brought him the garment, and, before he could answer Heracles' mad questions, the hero picked the messenger up, spun him round, and threw him.
Ouch! Heracles and throwing people off, like, seriously, stop it.
Has he never heard of don't bodily fling the messenger about? The messenger became stone as he flew through the air, in a process which is compared to rain becoming snow by Ovid. He landed in the Euboean Sea, where Ovid says there is still a reef which looks like a human to this day. Heracles began chopping down trees at this point and building a funeral pyre for himself.
Alright.
He gave his bow and arrows to a man called Philoctetes, or else the man's father. The reason for this was that this man agreed to light the pyre when everyone else was afraid to do it. Heracles then placed the skin of the Nemean lion gently down next to the pyre and lay down on the pyre with his club.
His human part burned away in the fire just like a snake's shedding skin. However, what he got from Zeus was not subject to death.
Okay, I mean that reminds me a bit of energy in the first law of thermodynamics, the godly part of him cannot be created or destroyed sort of thing.
Exactly. His godly side awoke and became powerful. Zeus himself descended from the skies in his chariot to bear Heracles away. He then married Hebe, daughter of Zeus and Hera, so maybe his half-sister?
Yeah, that is his half-sister, and also you already have a wife, rude.
And also, what about Deianira?
And Iole, in fact.
When she learned what happened, Deianira, she decided to say goodbye to the world.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Now, what about Iole? Well, she married Ilus, the son of Heracles.
Okay.
This was the last wish of Heracles as he was dying.
Bit weird that he first takes the woman, presumably for himself, and then betroths her to his son. You can sense a real age difference there.
Now, we have some other shenanigans with the Heraclidae which Helios is involved in, but we're once again not going to cover it here.
Yeah, much like with the descendants of Perseus, the descendants of Heracles are a whole thing.
Iole became pregnant with Ilus' child. In fact, they had 4 children, a son Cleodeus and 3 daughters. Cleodeus was the father of Lanassa, who became the wife of Achilles' son Neoptolemus.
Okay, again, put a pin in both those names. We'll be back to it.
Cleodas also had a son Aristomachus who had 3 sons, among them Temenus. Now, why are we telling them this?
Well, Temenus himself had a son called Charanos who would become king of Macedon. Maybe you've heard of it. We fast forward through his son Coenus and grandson Tyromas to get to his great-grandson Perdiccas I. This Perdiccas is the 9th great-grandfather of Alexander III of Macedon. He's also known by a different name, which I don't know if you've heard of it. Alexander the... what was it? Oh yeah, Alexander the Great.
Oh, I've heard of that guy.
Yeah. So Alexander the Great is a 17th great-grandson in the male line of Heracles himself. Surprised?
Yes, actually.
Yeah, well, he loves that story. Given that a generation is about 30 years, this means that Alexander the Great, born in 356 BCE, as we've said before, should have lived about 600 years before Heracles in, let's say, 956 BCE. We've seen this isn't really in line with the Parian stela, however, maybe the Heraclidae had children very late. You know, biblical figures had kids at several hundred years old, I think.
And we also hear from Plutarch's lives of Agesilaus or Agesilaus II of Sparta that the Spartan kings descend from Heracles. Specifically, both the Eurypontid line Agesilaus II belonged to and the Aegead line of Spartan kings descend from a man called Eurycines.
Okay.
Eurycines was the son of Aristodemus, brother of Timenus, son of Aristomachus, and hence a great-great-grandchild of Heracles.
Okay, so if Eurystheus is a great-great-grandchild of Heracles, Leonidas of the film 300 fame is also a descendant of Heracles. We'll also see some other descendants turn up in the Trojan War, I think, as we hinted with, I think it's Tlepolemus. A lot of these names are a mouthful, I'm sorry for dragging you through these.
Either way, that's the life and legacy of Heracles.
Yep.
With that, we have reached the end of chapter 1, so what's next?
Well, you might have noticed that we've been laying quite a bit of groundwork in the last few episodes. For example, we established in the last couple of myths that Aphrodite is capable of having human lovers, the appeal of golden apples, the importance of weddings, and that Troy is surprisingly able to be attacked by various heroes. So, as you might have predicted, in chapter 2, we're off to the Trojan War.
But before then, we've got a summary episode next time around, where we're going to answer a few of your questions, ask each other questions, just summarizing what we've talked about briefly, and yeah, should be fun.
It's going to be great. Well, until then, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Apologies for the large mouthful of complicated Greek names today, and have a great week, everyone.
Have a great read.
I like that story.
It's been a while.
It's the end of an era. The end of an era, please.